Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. In this video, I will explain you on how to access your Kubernetes application outside your AKS cluster. So in my example, I am going to access the AKS container parts outside the AKS cluster with the URL www.im7ins.com/testaks. So this you can achieve it in multiple ways. Number one, you can use it through Azure Load Balancer, and also you can use through application gateway AGIC. But in this example, I'm going to use internal load balancer. So this internal load balancer will get created when you deploy your application through when you deploy application through services by just simply adding the annotation internal. When you do that, your internal load balancer will get created. That internal load balancer creates the external IP. That external IP will be used as the backend pull IP in the app gateway. That is how your app gateway and your AKS cluster will get interacted. For example, if you want to have a secure communication between your AKS cluster and app gateway, then you need to use private link and private endpoints. And if you wanted to make your application hosted on the public, then you need to use a public DNS zone. In my example, I will be using the IONOS as a public DNS zone to resolve the public IP to access my AKS application. Okay, to execute what I explained in my previous slide, then you need to have a list of resources to do this. First, I need to create a VNet, and inside the VNet, I'm going to create 3 subnets. One subnet for the AKS cluster, second subnet for the app gateway, and third subnet for the private link and private endpoint. I'm just creating all these 3 subnets the same VNet, just to avoid the VNet peering. If you are using all the 3 subnets in different VNet, then you have to use the VNet peering. And then you need to have your AKS cluster, load balancer, public IP, app gateway, private link and private endpoint, and DNS zone. I'm going to create in the same order during the demo. So yeah, which I will be showing in a couple of minutes. So in this slide, I will be explaining how these cloud resources are going to interact when the user hits the application from browser and all the way to your Kubernetes cluster. So as soon as you hit the URL with the fully qualified domain name, it goes to your public domain zone where your A name is configured. Every A name has a corresponding IP address. That IP is going to be a public IP in Azure portal, which we will be creating and attached to your Azure application gateway. This application gateway is responsible of transferring the traffic from your AKS cluster back to your browser. So you have to secure your connection between, in order to secure your connection between your Azure application gateway and AKS, you can do that through private link and private endpoint. As you know that Azure Load Balancer is too expensive. You cannot have Azure Load Balancer for each and application hosted under the AKS. Instead, you can have the internal load balancer, which you can create as part of your service deployment by simply having the annotation internal in your YAML file. So when you run that services, it will create the external IP for each application. So basically, each application has its own internal load balancer that get communicated to your Azure application gateway through backend pull IP. That is how your AKS cluster and Azure application gateway get communicated with each other. Let's see all this flow in a demo shortly. Please stay tuned. Okay, we are in the demo time. Please follow along. We are going to execute this 14th step. Let me go back to the Azure portal. So here under the AKS demo subscription, I am having the resource group RGAKS. I am going to create the VNet. So let me go and create the VNet. VNet is nothing but your virtual network, which is used to send traffic between one resource to other resources through the subnet. Let me search for virtual network. So I'm going to create one VNet and 3 subnet within the same VNet. The reason why I'm doing is that just to avoid the VNet peering, so that all my resources are bundled everything under the same VNet. So here I'm changing the name from default to some common name. Let me keep this one as subnet underscore AKS save, and I'm going to create the another subnet. This one I will keep it like it's a subnet underscore app gateway apiVersion. Okay, if you see here, previously 10.0.0.0, and every time when I create a new subnet, by default you will be having the number incremented by year. You add and add one more. As I mentioned before, in my first slide, we'll be using 3 subnet. The third one is for the private link and private endpoint. Subnet underscore PE. Add. Next. Create review. Create. Okay, so this will take a couple of minutes. Once your VNet is created, that means you are going to have one VNet. Under that, we are going to have 3 subnet. Okay, so let me show you that quickly. Now you can see there is a VNet global. In that VNet global, if you go to your subnet, I'll be having 3 subnet. Subnet for AKS, subnet for app gateway, and subnet for private endpoint. I'll be installing our AKS cluster using this AKS subnet, and application gateway I'll use this one, and for the private endpoint I'll be use this one. The reason why I'm creating everything in one VNet, as I mentioned before, just to avoid the VNet peering. Let me go back here. Now now going back to your checklist, you have completed your VNet creation, and just saying that I'm going to use this subnet for the AKS cluster creation. So going back here, let's click here and search for AKS cluster. Search AKS. Just click create. Use the RGAKS. So here you will have multiple options. I'm selecting the dev test so that it won't cost you much. And here I can thinking to give the existing one so that I can use the same command. I'm just trying to keep it as much as minimal so that it won't cost you more. So yeah, AKS clusters are so expensive, so you have to be very mindful and to make sure that what agent pool you select is more important. At the same time, if you are not using it, please stop it. Okay, there are like various ways you can do the RBAC, but most of the industry standard, they use Microsoft Entra ID authentication with RBAC. I'll put a separate video in detail in the future videos. Go and click next. Here is what you need to define which agent pool is going to create. I don't want to create 2 to 5, and also this is a very higher range. So you have, I'm going to use a very minimal what is needed. Simply go and click choose a size. So for me, this is more than enough, even though it's a little expensive, but I will shut down as soon as this video is complete. Select, and I don't want to create a multiple zone. I'm simply going to keep it under one zone. And I don't want to do auto scaling. I want to keep the node count as 1. See, if you look at every option, what I select is a very minimal, because it is purely for the learning and for the video purpose. So don't be careful on what you select at the time of selecting all these options. Go back to update. Okay, and go to next. Okay, so yeah, it's a Azure CNI overlay is a very biggest topic. Just for the interest of what is focus, I'm not going into the detail, but you can select any DNS name, AKS. Let's prefix it DNS, AKS lib1. And you. Okay, this is what I'm searching for. Bring your own Azure virtual network. If you don't select, it will go and create your virtual network in its own VNet. But since we have created, I'm going to create what we have created. So I'm going to choose the VNet global, and I already have the subnet for the AKS. I'm going to choose this. So when you do this, it's going to tell what would be the services range and IP range. I'm simply going to give, because if you just give next, it will have a conflict. Okay, so because this is something what I was previously used, so it's going to throw an error. If it's just click next, at a later point of time, I'm going to get an error there. Go and click next. I'm going to, as I said before, I'm going to keep it very minimal. I don't want to have any type of resources that is more than what is needed. Even the AKS cluster is free, but all these features are expensive. So better for your learning, don't use it, because these things are needed for a different reason. Okay, I told you before, this networking is going to throw an error because it's having the conflict with the IP. So we need to resolve that. So click this. You see, I told you, right? Because I'm already used. You need to make sure that you are not using those IP ranges anywhere else. Just to avoid that, I'm going to simply put some number here. Something to, if you put this 2, you need to make the same CIDR range for the service and the DNS. Okay, now you should be good. Review and create. Okay, it's going to take a few minutes. I'm going to pause this video, and I will return back once the Kubernetes cluster is created. Okay, your Kubernetes cluster creation is complete. Let me configure to access this application from my local. Okay, so I have the command already. These commands are also available in the Microsoft documentation. I would recommend you to go through the document if you are doing it for the very first time. Since I already connected and I'm using the set the subscription, otherwise you need to execute this first AC login and AC account set subscription. But since I'm already connected and for me it doesn't need that, so I'm skipping the first two steps. I'm going to the third one. Okay, kubectl get nodes. Okay, yeah, it's a kubectl. I can connect the Kubernetes cluster in my local, my personal laptop. So going back to your browser, so I'm just going back. Okay, one thing I just wanted to show you, as soon as you create, there will be a new resource group will be created. So if you look at here, I can show you that whatever we gave is all the information is there. I'll put a detailed video later about creating the Kubernetes cluster and going through over all the steps and explaining what is namespace and everything. You can refer my old video where I talked about each and every detail for in the Kubernetes bare metal. Okay, going back to your resource group, and even I'll go back to my subscription. So at the time when I create, there is only one resource group, RG_AKS. Now you might be seeing two more. Okay, this is all two got created. So remember, since I only selected only the I almost disable all the option, but still it get created. But for now, don't worry too much on that. And this resource group is very important that you need to notice here. So here it has the VM scale set and agent pool, the network security group, and also the managed identity and the default load balancer. Okay, these default load balancers come as part of the cluster creation, but we are not worried about, we are not going to use this load balancer. As I told before, we are going to use the internal load balancer. With that internal load balancer is what we are going to connect with your app gateway. I'll take back to the YAML file. So coming back here, this is a deployment YAML which I'm going to deploy. I'll put this link. I'll attach this YAML in my GitHub. So I'll give that link in my description when I upload this video. So if you look at here, there is this is the one which I was keep referring in couple of times earlier in the video, where this annotation I'm referring as true. When I say true, that means this service is going to create the internal load balancer. Okay, let me show you. As soon as I deploy this deployment.yaml, you are going to see there will be an internal load balance which is going to get created. Let me go and create that now. kubectl. I'm just for the ease, I kept that deployment YAML in the AKS directory. Apply -here deployment.yaml. This is going to basically, when you deploy this YAML, is going to create the deployment with one replica. And this is a simple application where basically, which is a simple Python web flask, which is going to show you. Let me show you that. simple. Hello, we are seeing the AKS container. This is a simple application. This is what I'm deploying as part of this deployment.yaml. So I created as a Docker image and uploaded into my Docker hub, and that is what you are seeing. I am someone is dockerdemo and azureILB. If you want to know more about Docker, how to use, upload, all that, it is there in my earlier video. I would definitely recommend you to go through that video. Okay, so since I ran it now, let's go and check kubectl get pods. Now you will be seeing an application with AKS with this same name. You are going to see aksappgw, something is what you will be seeing it, which is running now, and kubectl get svc. Basically, I'm going to see if any services are being created, because my deployment YAML has the deployment and as well as service, so it's going to create. Okay, if you see here, this external IP, within like within like 20 to 30 seconds, this external IP is going to get created. Let's give for a couple of minutes. And I wanted to tell you one more thing. Okay, now going back to your portal, I told you that it's going to create the load balancer. Let me refresh this page. Now you see there is an internal load balancer got created, Kubernetes -internal. Okay, let me go back and double check here. Okay, this external IP, this is going to be my external IP, what I'll be using as a backend pool. I'll store this somewhere here, so that this you will be using this IP in your app gateway. At the time when you create the app gateway, this will be needed to keep it as a reference. That is how your app gateway and your load balancer will communicate each other. Okay, so now going back to our checklist, as I mentioned before, now we have created the cluster creation, and we created all the three subnet, but right now we have only used one subnet, even though we created all the three subnet, but only one subnet is being utilized. So okay, and this is also done. I configured to access my cluster from my local. I deployed my application is complete. Test your application inside and outside. Okay, I told you before, my intent here is to access this application from the portal. Since I did not do anything, you will be getting the site can't be reached. That is, which is the expected one, going back to the cluster. Okay, so if you wanted to access the application, you need to have another part. So that is what I'm going to do. kubectl run nginx. I'm using the image equal to nginx. Right. So basically, I'm creating the another part nginx. Since I cannot access outside my cluster, I'm going to show you that my application is working, which is accessible within the Kubernetes cluster. That is what I'm trying to show here in this demo. kubectl get pods. You'll be seeing a two pod. Earlier one with the one which I created as part of deployment.yaml, the second one the nginx, which I created a few seconds back. I'm going to get into that nginx, kubectl execute -it nginx bash. So basically I'm getting into the container. From inside that nginx container, I'm going to call this particular part. Okay, so if you see there are many ways. I'm not going to go into the detail how you can connect from one pod you can access the other part. This is all the Kubernetes basics, but if you need, I can put a different video on that. So call -kv http:// and I'm going to use my the name of the service name /test AKS. If you see here, hello, we are seeing AKS container outside the cluster, because it's just simply displaying what my application says. Okay, the reason why I'm using test AKS, because in my application I put /test AKS. That is why I'm passing that /test AKS. Going back to my Okay, if you try to do this, or even if you try to access with your load balancer IP, let me show you. I'm trying to access with the load balancer IP, right? KV HTTP. The load balancer IP is 10.0.5 test AKS. Okay, if I hit the same one outside the portal, this is not going to work because your application is still not reachable outside your AKS cluster. Okay, so going back to my checklist, but you can access here. It's not necessary that you need to access only with the public domain. There are a few ways you can do through the node port, which is a different concept within the Kubernetes services like node port, host port, etc. But that is, our intent here is to how to access your Kubernetes through the internal load balancer and Azure App Gateway. Let's focus on the one what we are trying to do in this demo. Going back to your checklist, so we done this part. So inside it's working, outside it's not working. Now we need to create the public IP. In the architect flow diagram, when the browser is the URL, it goes to your public IP and go and check. That is how your ENM will get resolved. That's what I told you. The public IP something is what we need to create. Let me go and create. So going back to my, this can be created anywhere. I'm going to create in the same resource group, whatever it is, right? You can create anywhere. This public IP can be created anywhere, which you can access from anywhere else. So I'm simply searching for public IP. Yeah, my machine is a little slow. I'll give a pass. Let me fix my, okay, yeah, it's loading now. Okay, I click create and it will show you where you want to create. So I'm just keeping the name like pip-app gateway. PIP is a short name of public IP, and hyphen for what I'm going to use it within that app gateway. So here keep is zone redundant. If you change anything else, then you cannot create a private link or private endpoint. So this option is needed if you want to use private link or private endpoint. If you don't use that, okay, for now this doesn't matter. Keep it zone redundant. Next, I can disable this one. Next, yeah, this is basically you are creating the public IP, which you will be using this public IP during your app gateway creation. Okay, going back to the checklist, public IP is created. Okay, now the very important thing that this is a core for this entire video. I would definitely recommend everyone to focus from here onwards, because this is a little bit confusing. At the same time, it's very important to access your AKS application outside your Kubernetes cluster with the help of gateway. So that is what we are going to see it now. So I'm going back and going back to the resource group, anywhere let it be anywhere. I'm going to create one more resource, which is called the app gateway. Application gate. Okay, click this. Okay, there is a difference. Load balancer and application gateway, it's fall under the layer 7. Application load balancer fall under the layer 4. So yeah, that is something you can explore. The difference between application gateway. People use application gateway for HTTP, which is at the layer 7. Okay, anyway, I'm going next. So I'm going to create app gateway AKS lib1 ILB1, can be any name. So yeah, standard V2 is what you need to select. If you choose basic, you don't find. I was messing. This is what I was trying to explain, the public IP, but this is very important. You need to select standard V2. If you select basic, then you cannot select private private link or private endpoint. This is what I was a little bit confused when I was explaining during the public IP. Yeah, this is what I was trying to say. Use standard V2 in order to use public private link and private endpoint later. Then I'll keep it as I told you, try to keep it as minimal if you want to learn. I'm going to keep the instance count as 1. So the virtual network, so I'm not going to use create new. I already created three subnet. I'm going to create VNet global, and if you see subnet underscore AKS, I'm not going to use that. I'm already have something specific for the app gateway. Then going to next front end. Okay, so I will be using this video for both public and private. So if you are only going to make this application only internet, then you can simply select public. If you are going to access within your internally within your R, then you can use private. But for now, I'm going to use private for both. This is the public IP which I'm going to use. Note down this public IP. This public IP is what I'm going to use at the time in my DNS zone. Okay, let me note down some of this public IP. Okay. Okay, we need to keep something because our subnet range for this. Okay, let me tell you something. What you need to select, right? If you go back here under the AKS demo, and let me show you one important thing. Okay, so here under the VNet global, I'm going to this subnet app gateway. So you need to give the IP within this range. Okay, so let me copy this. Going back, I can simply put here. It's still going to throw an error, but you need to keep it something 15. Okay, so this is going to be your private IP address of your. Okay, so this is also something you might need to remember. Let me keep it somewhere else. Next, backend. Add backend pool. So as I mentioned before, your backend pool is nothing but, let me put backend pool private. And this is going to be your external IP. This external IP is nothing but where I copied from your kubectl get service. So basically the external IP. External IP is what is going to be your backend pool IP. So yeah, you have to be very careful that your load balancer IP is what you need to give here. Give next, and next configuration. Click the routing rule. HTTP private. I'm doing everything for the private now, and later on, once I show private is working, I'll do it for the public. Private rule. So you can basically give this priority between 1 and, so I just simply give 101 listener name. Listener name, I give it like listener private HTTP, because I'm going to create one for public too. That's why I'm keeping this naming convention so that I don't miss it. Private IP. So yeah, because this is private, if you see there is two private and public, I'm selecting private, and that's it. Okay, and then you have to go to backend target. The backend target, you can select backend put private. This is coming from the previously what we selected here, and here we need to add new backend setting HTTP private. Okay, I think that's all. Okay, add. Okay, everything is done for private now. Now next tags, next review. Let me take this. This is what we need to add it in the DNS zone. DNA. I'll show you that later. Create. So this will take 6 minutes. I'll pause this video for a few minutes. Okay, your application gateway is complete. Let me go back. Okay, now you already configured your app gateway. Let me go and check your backend L. Your backend L is what it will show you whether your application gateway is receiving the code from your AKS cluster. It's through an error, says 404, because I know, because I already got the similar error. You have to go to your health probes, add your health probe, because it's by default it's only getting the let me show you HTTP probe, and here I need to give my load balancer IP, this one, and then I need to give /test AKS, and here you need to select the backend setting HTTP private. So yeah, it's looking for the base URL, but it doesn't know what URL. So since my application is going to be like /test AKS, that's why it's throwing an error. When you give add, it takes few seconds to refresh here. Yeah, it's still saving here, and after some time if you refresh, whatever you see unhealthy, that will disappear and it will show you that it's healthy. Okay, let's give few more seconds to refresh. Okay, in the meantime, let me go to the checklist. Application gateway creation, and the corresponding is subnet to. Now you need to test your application using your app gateway IP, right? So that is what our intent here. Let me go back to your health probe again, just double checking. Sometimes there would be a latency delay, So you might get something like unhealthy. Yeah, now it's healthy. You see, it's healthy. Okay, now let's go back and we can do the similar testing by going to your Kubernetes cluster. Okay, so now the earlier this one call -kv I'm going to use with this private IP. This is the private IP what we created. I'm going to use that. Okay, see, so from the app gateway IP, the application is working. That means you can connect. Let me clear the screen. So you're basically trying to access your Kubernetes application from your app gateway. This is your app gateway private IP. Okay, but this works, but you cannot access with your app gateway public because we haven't defined that traffic rules. Okay, so call -kv http:// test AKS. It will not work because you did not define your traffic for your public, so only the private works. So that is what I mentioned, that once private works I will go and change it for the public. So I will do this public little bit later, but we will go exactly what is there in our checklist, right? We need to access your application with your private link, because application gateway as your private and public. Still, if you want to secure more, you can even add your private link and private endpoint. So quickly I'll show you. It's not going to take more time. This is what most of the industry, the standard they follow. Everything they will go through your private link and private endpoint. So going back here, here you will see something called private link. Simply go here and create add PL for private link app gateway AKS-LIB, and it takes the same VNet global. This time I'm going to create subnet P, and the front end I'm going to use private add give add. Yeah, just the connectivity, but here you're not saying what resources to use. You are not defining anything. That one, the which resource to talk where, that information will be there in your private endpoint. Okay, so I'm going to choose plus private endpoint. I'm going to give this name private endpoint after app gateway. So this will create your NIC. This is very important because this one has its own IP address. So you see, every time when you add most layer, you are adding another private IP. You are adding another private IP. That is, you are strengthening your AKS cluster by adding app gateway. On top of it, you are adding one more layer, which is called private link and private endpoint. Going to next resource. Yeah, it's already select the endpoint IP virtual network. I'm going to use private endpoint subnet. Click next DNS. No tag review and create. So let me go back to the checklist. So we have created this. We have used the subnet 3. Now I'm going to access this private endpoint IP. Right? If you go back here, this will basically create the private endpoint. There will be IP generated for this private endpoint. with that private endpoint IP, we are going to access your application from your Kubernetes cluster. Remember, we are still not achieved what exactly our plan. We need to use this URL to access your application. Only then your demo is complete. Okay, that is our ultimate aim. So going back to your browser to check if the private endpoint is complete or not. It's still in progress. Okay, it's complete. So going back to your private endpoint, when you go to your private endpoint, you will be having a network interface. This is very important, where you will be having the private IP. This private IP is what you are going to test it now. curl-kv /test. You see, with this private endpoint IP, we can access your AKS container outside the cluster. But if you notice here, your app gateway itself as a public IP, which is not working because we did not set the traffic rules, which I'm going to do it now. Right now, if you go to your app gateway, your app gateway only has your rules for your private, not for the public. That is why you cannot access your okay, you have your public IP URL, right now. If you look at your, let me go back to your, this is your public IP. If you go and access your with a public IP, this is not going to work. http://test AKS. The expectation is the public IP should be open for everyone, but you cannot access your AKS cluster because there is no rules or anything defined in your app gateway, which I'm going to create it. So going back to your backend pool, I'm going to create another backend pool, which is backend pool public. Okay, I'm going to use the same load balancer IP because even though it's a public, I'm still going to call my load balancer IP in my AKS cluster. You add. Then go to your backend setting, add another one, backend setting public. Okay, in the front-end IP configuration, you already have, but there is no associated listener. So going back to your listener, okay, that's something which I wanted to say. If you want to use HTTPS, then you need to create your security certificate and everything. But mine is a simple application. I'm not using it. That's why I'm not using these SSL settings. So going back to the listener, I'm going to create the one more listener for public. Yeah, this will be little confusing, but more you practice, you'll get it just like that. The front-end IP, make it public because this is a public one, and give add. So I have added everything except the rules. HTTP public root. I already gave 101. If you give same, it's going to throw an error. It takes some, either I need to keep 99 or some other name, but not the same number. I'll keep 102. Okay, if you see, it still is showing listener public HTTP. I need to change this because I need to use okay, sorry, I need to use I thought it's a private, it's a public. Yeah, that's good. The backend one, I'm going to use backend pull public, and here I'm going to use backend setting public. Okay, one, this is complete. Remember, I did a health probe. If you look at now my backend health, I have only one, which is for the private, but I haven't done for now. I'm going to add one more for the public one. Once I configure everything, whatever you see, this is going to work. Okay, that is our thing. So going back to your probe, add HTTP public, and here give your whatever it is you are going to access. Your backend IP is only one in the AKS cluster. That is only one. That is not going to change. Test AKS. Here I need to select setting public and test. Okay, so one thing I forgot to tell. Right now, after your private endpoint, if you want to make your private endpoint only accessible within your org, then there will be something called private DNS zone. That private DNS zone will be managed by within your org. That they will be given your some specific URL. Let's say if you are working inside Google company or Microsoft, they will give you something called let's say you are working for kubernetes.microsoft.com. that will be managed within your org. That they add your A name inside. For that A name, your private IP of this will be get added over here, so that people inside your org can access that portal inside your organization. Okay, yeah, that is something I've thought of saying. I forgot it, but okay, now as we said before, right, our ultimate aim is to access your web application. We are not there yet. I need to take you to the IONOS, which is my public domain name. I will take you there shortly once I complete the public app gateway rules and settings and listener. Everything is modified. I'll show you that. Now going back to your backend health. Earlier you have seen just one. Now there will be two. One for the HTTP private and the second one is for your HTTP public. Okay, this saves the status code as well. Yeah, maybe it could be the same reason. Take some time to sync. I'll pause this video for a few seconds. Okay, it is healthy now. Both are up and running. If you go on it, the expectation is the application should be working. Okay, see here, I can access the same one which wasn't working before. I can access with my public URL. If I go back to my cluster and do the same thing, whatever I did before which wasn't working now is going to work. Cool. Okay. Yeah, it's going to say same thing. Although we are seeing AKS. Okay, good. So we are good, but as I said, our final thing is to access iamsomeoneelse.com, test AKS. I talk every time like about A name, public IP and all that. But I haven't used public IP, what I've created. I'm going to use that public IP. This is my DNS. Where I purchased. I'm owning it for last couple of years. I'm going to, this is my domain, iamsomeoneelse.com is my domain. I'm going to add that A name. We go to your A name. First let me find out my IP. Okay, take this your IP, copy this and go to your domain under the DNS. If you are using GoDaddy, it might be something different, but since I'm using IONS, this is how you need to do. So once you save, it might take a couple of minutes. Sometimes it takes few hours to sync, but let me double check. I'll pause this video. It might take sometimes takes a little longer too. Okay, it worked. So when I hit that www.imsoundnews.com.test AKS, it works. Okay, let me open another one. www. Okay, now your AKS cluster application is getting connected through your browser with the help of App Gateway. And App Gateway is a core it's a very important concept here, where your internal load balancer IP is used in your App Gateway, and that is how you are accessing your application with your DNS zone. I hope you like this video. If you like it, please like it and subscribe it. And last thing, one very important thing, as I told you, these AKS clusters are so expensive. I'm going to go and delete it. Okay, so I'm going to my AKS. I'm going to delete everything under my subscription. So I have the AKS demo subscription. I'm going to delete everything, including my subscription. I'm going to delete it. This is very important. Don't miss it. It's very expensive too. So only AKS cluster is $65, but your use App Gateway, use public IP, use virtual network subnet, and you're consuming a lot of IPs. It's going to cost you more. I recommend you please go and delete all, including I'm going to delete the subscription itself. Okay, that's what I'm going to do later. Okay, thanks for watching. If you like this video, please like it and subscribe it. Thank you.